The COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically impacted our lives. We have lost friends and family members. Our lifestyles have been altered. Many have lost employment and businesses have closed or are struggling to survive. Houses of worship have also been significantly impacted. Worship services, pastoral care, fellowship activities, and meetings have all had to adapt to meet safety requirements. Particularly challenging for Christian churches is the commemoration of Advent and the celebration of Christmas. Today we talk with the Reverend Tracy Daub of the University Presbyterian Church in Buffalo, and then the Reverend Dr. Jonathan Lawrence of St. Peter's United Church of Christ in North Tonawanda about their church's journeys during the pandemic and how they will be commemorating Advent and celebrating Christmas this year. I'm very pleased to be joined by Reverend Tracy Daub, who is the pastor at University Presbyterian Church here in Buffalo, to kind of share their journey as they've experienced during this pandemic, and also how they plan to commemorate Advent and celebrate Christmas. So welcome, Reverend Tracy Daub.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about University Presbyterian Church.
Sure. University Presbyterian Church is located in North Buffalo, right across the street from the South Campus of UB. And that's the original mission of that church. When it started in 1921, it was to serve as a congregation and a ministry to the university community. I'm even told that way back they didn't have food service on campus at that time. And so the University Presbyterian Church opened up a cafeteria inside its church to serve meals to university students. So it's from its very origins, it's been aimed at the university. We still attract university students. Many in these days, a lot are international students who find their way to our church. And we're a congregation of about 140, 150 members.
But you still do a lot with students. You provide housing.
We do.
Kind of fellowship and support and meals.
Yes, we have an ongoing ministry with university students. We have a church-owned building right next to the church that we involve up to 4 university students in an intentional living, Christian living community. And those relationships with those students over the years have been tremendous, really wonderful. They've benefited us, and I'd like to think that we've been a support to them in meaningful ways.
And the church also has a food pantry.
A very important food pantry that serves the region 2 days a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. And that's been ongoing for decades. And we continue to serve, and particularly now in the pandemic, we've had a tremendous increase of need, and our numbers have really skyrocketed. And at the same time, especially at the beginning, so many of our volunteers were senior citizens who felt that they were unsafe in volunteering. So we've had to suddenly scramble to get new recruits for volunteers. But we've made that come together, and it's been working, and we're really feel really that we are helping to provide an important ministry and service to the community in this really difficult time.
Well, how has your church adapted to the pandemic? What are some of the changes you've gone on to continue your care to your members, to have worship, and to have meetings and other kinds of programs?
I know we're very much like many congregations. When this pandemic hit and we had to suspend worship and in-person gatherings, we had to scramble to figure out how to do things in a new way. And of course, thankfully, technology has come to our rescue in a lot of ways. So our worship services became something that we went to the internet. We're able to put our services online, initially through YouTube. Now we're doing Facebook. And so we were able to continue to offer Sunday worship for people. I started a midweek online Zoom Bible study. So now we do a Zoom Bible study, not in person, but on the internet. And that has been a meaningful thing for folks. And our meetings, also gone Zoom. And of course, that was a really big challenge because not all of our members were up to speed on technology. I wasn't either. I had to learn how to do Zoom and integrate all of this stuff on the internet that we didn't have to do before. So there was for a while kind of a stressful learning curve for all of us, but it has come together. Now we don't think twice about having to do all of our meetings by Zoom and connect with one another. It's not my preference. It's not any of our preferences. There's kind of no substitute for being in person. We believe in an embodied presence of God through Christ, and so we want to be that to each other. But we are grateful that the technology has allowed us to stay connected in this difficult time.
Well, soon as you begin to experience and how to do some opening and some virtual together, the orange rules
Yes.
came in.
Yeah.
And it was shut down again. I'm sure that was a little stressful.
Yeah, so, in September, we opened up to limited form of in-person, and many people obviously still remained at home worshiping online with us. And so we were just beginning to kind of hit our stride in how to make those adaptations to doing both at the same time and being safe with people in person. Then, of course, Orange comes along. And so we have pulled back again. We are now, once again, only online for worship. And people seem to have, or adjusting with that. It's my hope that this won't last long, but it's just impossible to say. So we've been having to readjust now, and our expectations of what may be coming up for Christmas, what that means. We've already, feels like in the spring, we had to forego all of our plans for Easter, and now our another major holiday in the Christian tradition is kind of in jeopardy, but we are trying to adjust to anticipate if things remain in orange, or I hope not, but if they should proceed to red and more restrictions are in place, how can we help our congregation celebrate Christmas, Advent and Christmas together?
Now, you've done a little special thing this year for Advent of sending packets out to all of your members.
Yes. So one way, striving to stay connected has been really important to us. People are so isolated. We're not seeing each other as easily anymore. We do try to contact each other by phone and try to stay connected. But as we move into Advent and Christmas, knowing that it's a difficult time for a lot of people anyway, and now we don't have the benefit of seeing and connecting in person. So we've put together we call them Advent bags, and a little packet with a miniature little Advent wreath and a votive candle, a devotional guide for Advent for every day in the Advent season, and a litany for lighting the Advent candle. The hope is that if people are worshiping with us online on a Sunday, when I go to light the Advent wreath in the service and do the litany, they at home can simultaneously be lighting their own Advent candle with us in an effort for us to feel united in a time when we're already, physically forced apart. And so we've sent these little bags out, and I think people have found them to be a nice gesture that are helping people feel connected.
Well, thank you, Reverend Tracy Daub, for sharing the journey of yourself and the church during this pandemic, and particularly how you're responding to Advent and Christmas. Have a good day, and thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Very pleased to welcome the Reverend Dr. Jonathan Lawrence, who is the pastor of St. Peter's United Church of Christ in North Tonawanda. Welcome, Reverend Lawrence.
Thank you, Stan.
It's good to have you here and to talk about what it means to be a pastor and what it means to be a leader of a congregation during the pandemic. But just for a little background, under normal life, what can you tell us about St. Peter's UCC?
All right, St. Peter's UCC has been in North Tonawanda. We celebrated our 125th anniversary a couple years ago. It started out as a German-speaking congregation in what eventually became the Evangelical and Reformed churches, which then in the 1950s became part of the United Church of Christ. And so we still have signs and chairs and other things in the basement that are still labeled as St. Peter's E and R. So we get reminders of that background sometimes. We're a small congregation. I'm there part-time in addition to my work at the college.
And where do members come from?
Most of the members are in the North Tonawanda or Wheatfield area. We have a few that are from farther away, some of them because they're parts of the extended church families, but most are from North Tonawanda, and most of the members of our congregation are senior citizens.
But you've had some creative community ministries, new ones.
Yes. Well, many years ago, our congregation helped start a food pantry and clothing closet that became part of what's now Twin Cities Community Outreach. And then 2 years ago, we started a Rainey's Closet, a clothing closet for foster families. And we were able to keep that going even during the pandemic, just with arrangements for people to pick up bags outside the door or to schedule appointments so that there weren't too many people present at the same time.
Well, talk a little bit about your church's journey during this pandemic.
So, as with many groups, right at the beginning, we debated and followed the state and county guidelines, but weren't sure would we have to close. And so the middle of March, that first Sunday, I recorded my sermon. I didn't have sort of the energy or equipment to record a whole service, but I recorded a short 7-minute sermon, which actually took me 2 hours between scripting it and recording it and then editing it. And that's one of the things that I know a lot of pastors have talked about, is just how much goes in behind the scenes into having a hopefully seamless online presence. So between March and July, I recorded something every week and I posted it online. After a couple months, we started doing our first Sunday of the month communion virtually. I recorded it and I would say, okay, if you want, go and get some juice, get some bread, and partake as we do this. We opened up in July for inside services with the windows open and social distancing, and we've been doing that since then. Although for the first Sunday of Advent, right after Thanksgiving, we decided to go back online for at least 1 week because we didn't want to take any risks that any family gatherings might cause us to spread anything.
Well, that brings us to the really key question right now. How are you planning to commemorate Advent and celebrate Christmas during the time of the pandemic?
Well, so the first thing is that doing the first Sunday of Advent online, I got out a little candle and I was able to set it up so that it was just visible on top of my laptop as I was recording. And so we did the candle lighting. But the bigger part is that for last Sunday, as we knew that people would be there the last Sunday before Advent, we put packets together both for families and for children with devotional and activity books from a group called Illustrated Ministry that has a lot of great coloring pages and devotionals and activities. And I drew in colored pencils and a battery candle and candle holder and a few other things, so that if we're not allowed to have any Advent Sundays at all, at least the families had some things to do. Normally on the first Sunday of Advent, we would be decorating the church and having a luncheon and having crafts and activities for the kids. Obviously that couldn't happen in the normal way this year. Our hope, because our building size is large enough that for our average attendance, our hope is that we'll be able to have Sunday services during Advent. The bigger challenge, though, is that depending on what level we are at for Christmas Eve, trying to, usually we have more people on Christmas Eve than on a regular Sunday. And so trying to keep social distancing, trying to minimize the total number of people in the building. We have a room where we could set up extra chairs with a monitor to be able to watch it live stream, if you will. But right now, and I suspect a lot of people are facing this, having to sort of come up with multiple plans to be able to shift quickly without having to suddenly plan a whole new way of doing things. And so potentially, if it looks like we can't be there in person, I've already thought about maybe putting together little packets with maybe an ornament and those pre-packaged communion cups, which is something I was never terribly comfortable with, but because at least right now it means that whether we distribute them ahead of time or whether we use them on Sunday morning, we can at least do communion safely.
Thank you.
Having to
Arts
make adjustments.
for joining us and to share your church and particularly the time of the pandemic.